Hello, everybody. My name is Constance, but most importantly, I have Martha Wells with us here tonight. We are on a little bit early. It's technically a minute until 7 o'clock when we will officially start, but we wanted to go ahead and just come on and say hello and let you guys know. I'll remind you at the end of the event. But we have a treat for you guys, and that Martha is being really awesome and amazing, and you are getting signed books, not book plates, but signed books from her. And we'll be taking personalization requests for those books until the 15th. That's going to be the cutoff date for them. And the link is provided, it's in like underneath the title of the video is the link for those books. So that's a big treat I just wanted to remind everyone about. So thank you so much for doing that, Martha.
Oh, no problem.
Oh, it is 7 o'clock, so we can officially begin. Okay, so hello everybody. I just said that, but it was 2 minutes ago and you might now just be joining us. So I am very excited to get to be hosting tonight. Ignore the fuzzy cat. But tonight we have a huge treat in that Martha Wells is joining us. She is a New York Times bestselling author, a Hugo and Nebula winner, many other awards and many other praises for her awesome writing that we could just go on and on about for a while. But I'm very excited. We are here today to celebrate Network Effect. Yay! The new book that is out into the world. So I've got a bunch of great questions just to go through everything. But before I start asking questions, Martha, would you actually mind just telling them a tiny little bit about the new book?
Oh, the new book, it takes place after Exit Strategy in the Murderbot Diaries. And it's the first full novel in the series. And it mostly involves Murderbot and Art meeting up again.
Awesome. Okay, well, we will go ahead and jump right into the questions then. Our first question that we've got is going to be, what was the original genesis of like the concept for this series? And also, how did that initial idea evolve over time, kind of like early drafts? How did it begin? And then how has it changed to what readers are now familiar with?
Well, originally, when I got the idea, it was going to be a short story. And it was going to be kind of a short story with a sad ending. And as I started to work on it, I was working on another fantasy novel at the time. I was working on the end of Harbors of the Sun. And as soon as and the idea just kind of came out of nowhere, just from everything that was going on in the time and at the time in my whole life, basically. And I started work on it as soon as I could, as soon as I finished the draft of the fantasy novel. And I don't usually have the entire story come to me like that when I'm writing. So that was really nice. I'm usually a much slower writer. And as soon as I started working on it, the first scene I think I wrote was the scene with when Dr. Menson knocks on the cubicle wall and talks to Murderbot. And it became really obvious really quickly that this was going to be too long a story for a short story, and that I didn't want it to have a sad ending. And so novella length I thought would work really well for it, and Tor.com had started their novella program the previous year, so I thought that might be a good venue for it if they wanted to buy it. And I just worked on it, and the character kind of evolved as I wrote the first novella, and really came into being for me and got fleshed out. And once I got the voice, I think, and I got the voice pretty early on, that really just the rest of the character just came with that. So, and that was it. And through the novellas, I didn't know it was going to be a series until actually my agent offered it to Tor.com and they bought it, but they asked for a second novella also. And that's when I decided to write Artificial Condition. And it wasn't really, I think until I finished Artificial Condition, I figured I wanted to do 2 more. So it didn't start out to be a series. It kind of evolved along the way.
What was that like too, when you were kind of saying when you were writing the first novella that you could tell it had like a feel where there's more to it than just this? Did you already have to put your editing brain on when you were writing that first novella for like picking and choosing what you wanted to include in it? Or how did that aspect of it kind of work, since you already had kind of an inkling that there was more to it?
Well, For the first one, I didn't really think there would be more. I thought that would be the only novella. When did I think? I guess it probably wasn't until I was started to write Artificial Condition that I thought there would be, more to the story. But knowing it wasn't going to be a short story, it was just the way the character was developing and the way the plot was developing. I know the idea I had some pretty clear visions of what was going to happen in All Systems Red, and realized it just wasn't going to be short, because short story length is, probably 7,000 words is usually what they want, and it's the novella is actually 33,000. So yeah, it was just not going to fit.
A big difference between those two.
Yeah.
And so you told us kind of about like the inception of everything. What actually attracted you though to writing a non-human character? And then what kind of ties into that as well is we had someone also ask what kind of research into like AI and robotics did you need to do for the book as well?
I always liked non-human characters. I like to read them like the whole time I've been reading science fiction and fantasy since I was a kid. I really liked non-human characters. I wrote non-human characters for my last fantasy series, the Books of the Raksura. There aren't any human characters in that. So I wasn't really intimidated by the idea by this point. When I came up with the idea of All Systems Red, it was obviously a science fiction idea. It wasn't really something I could have done in fantasy, at least not very easily. And an AI, part human, part robot, part machine intelligence kind of really just fit with what I wanted to do with the story. God, what was the second part of the question?
Well, I'll come back to that because I actually have a question now from what you just said. What did you feel like was the big difference between going from non-human in fantasy to non-human in science fiction?
Okay, it wasn't really very much of a difference. Oh, someone had asked about research for doing AI. I didn't do a lot of research on AI besides what I've just read over the past few years. What I did do, I worked in computer support and writing software for databases quite a while since I graduated college, really. So I was really experienced in that and doing web software and just writing interfaces for menu-driven interfaces for databases and things like that. So that's most of the experience I drew on my software experience.
Awesome.
But it wasn't really different going from a fantasy non-human character to a science fiction non-human character. It's just, I guess I've read so much science fiction over the years, even though I haven't written very much.
So it was just kind of an easy, natural transition for you.
Yeah, I think so. And it was just, again, the idea I had really lent itself. It was a science fiction idea. I don't think of it that there was really any way I could have done it in fantasy.
So lots of readers describe Murderbot as being extremely relatable. Why do you think that is, especially since it's not a human, but yet humans find it so relatable?
Well, it's very specific about its emotions, about the things it's feeling, and what's happened to it in the past and why it feels that way. So that's what's very relatable. And the particular kind of anxiety, social anxiety and depression that it has, I think is something a lot of people suffer from. I'm certainly drawing on my own experiences for that. So I think that also helps too.
And we've got some more questions coming in on Facebook too. So here's one we have is, what is the nature of art and Murderbot's relationship? Are they good friends or something else past friendship?
Well, they'll have to read the book.
They're trying to get spoilers out of us.
Get spoilers.
She caught you guys, and the answer is no spoilers, but good try. Okay, so for the novellas, I know it's hard because they are your babies, but what are your favorite characters at the moment? And then I feel like this could be the same answer, but it could also be two different things. What are your favorite characters? And then what's your favorite character to write?
Murderbot is my favorite character to write. Of other characters, probably Dr. Mensa. Just she's a character I really enjoy writing too, and it's been just the scenes between her and Murderbot are always a lot of fun to do. So she's definitely one of my favorites.
Nice. And let me thank you guys for writing in questions on Facebook. I am going to try and keep up with them, so give me a little bit of patience. Let's see. This one is from Diana Lee. We have let me be the first to throw down that I probably over-identify with Murderbot. Common theme. Next is Murderbot's introverted nature and their discomfort around and distrust of others, something that you draw from your personal experience.
Probably. I was really introverted when I was a kid, to the point where I probably had a little bit of agoraphobia before I left for college. And yeah, it just that I had, a lot of bad experiences as a kid, being very lonely, being very isolated, all that kind of thing. So yeah, that's where all that comes from.
And that's, I think as a writer, that's what makes it so powerful, that you're able to convey that and put that in, even if it's not a human, that human emotion is still able to come through.
Yeah.
And why it resonates with so many people. So this question is from Sherry Sung, and it says, it seems the foundation of this world that at a certain level of sophistication, a job requires someone with emotions and self-awareness. But is this de facto system of slavery merely an excuse? Is it simply expensive to develop an artificial system that can do the same thing and not be sentient? Or is it actually impossible? And they said in the first book, Murderbot comments on how the reason constructs are needed is that they can understand human situations. Was that strictly true? Do you think this is true in real life? That's a little complicated.
Well, in the world of the book, I don't think Murderbot knows whether it's true or not. The company probably could, if they put a lot of money into it, develop an AI that could do the same thing as a construct. But as you find when Murderbot meets art, that yeah, it is possible to have a very, very sophisticated AI that could make all those decisions just like a human, and much faster. So yeah, it is probably just a money issue that they don't do it. They found a way to do it that's cheap, and and they don't really care to try to do anything else, basically. As to what it's possible in real life, I really don't know. I'm not an AI expert in real life, only in fiction.
Murder. But between fiction and reality, murder is always an important, not murder, money is an important factor that rules everyone. And sometimes murder. So our next question is going to be from Rhonda. It says, having a discussion with fellow readers about the pronouns to use for Murderbot. They seem to assign their own gender and feel that using it, which I think Murderbot would definitely prefer, is dehumanizing.
Well, I thought Murderbot doesn't like to be human. It doesn't want to be human. So that's one reason why it chose that.
Okay, awesome.
Also, they have to remember this takes place in a different culture, different society. This is not taking place in our own world.
Mm-hmm. So there's a whole different approach to those kinds of things. The next question we've got is from Rebecca. And they're saying, could you comment on the process of creating the audiobooks and working with narrator Kevin R. Free? He does such a phenomenal job, and I can't imagine anyone else voicing Murderbot.
Yeah, he does do a phenomenal job, and that's all him. He checked in with me to make sure he had the right pronunciation, or what I thought of as the right pronunciation for some of the made up words. And the rest of the performance is him, reading the books. And I think we talked about it in email just a little bit, but that's all him. He's fabulous. That's having the right narrator and having someone who's a really good actor like that is so important for the audiobooks.
I think that can be, obviously you need an amazing story, but for audiobooks, narrator is also so important. You can kind of break that form of the medium. Tying into other forms of media, we have a question about a movie, and they're asking, like, kind of in your dream world, who do you want to play Murderbot?
I don't know. I've never really seen an actor that I thought would be the person I would pick. It's when you try to think about stuff like that, you start to realize how good casting directors have to be able to look at people in different roles or people in their normal circumstances and say, okay, this person would be perfect.
Yeah.
So I've never really seen an actor that, I have other characters, that I've thought. Dr. Mensah, I could think of a few different people I would like to see play her, like Viola Davis, I thought would be cool to see. Is it Thandie Newton from Westworld? Is that new?
I'm not as good with the actors' names. I'm better with faces, unfortunately.
I don't know if it's Thandie Newton or Thandie Newman. Somebody's got to know on Facebook. But the human characters are easier for me to think of things like that. I'm not good at a bunch of different actor names either. I just see people on the TV and go, oh yeah.
I'm like the person that was in that movie that had this color hair and these eyes. I'm like, yes, exactly that person. I'm like, no clue. We have another question. Let's see, from Jacqueline, and it says, I was also wondering if Murderbot needed to get special permission to be on the planet that doesn't allow weapons outside of nature areas at the beginning of network effect, or if it's somehow exempt or there is some other explanation given that it has built-in energy weapons that can't be removed.
Well, yeah, it's part of its body. So yeah, basically would have gotten special permission because you can't take those off. So
this one's a funny one. This one says, do you share Murderbot's obsession with soap operas and other media?
Not with soap operas. I used to watch soap operas, a long time ago when I was in college and a little bit afterward when I had more time. But actually, Rise and Fall of Sanctuary Moon is not a soap opera. It's more of a nighttime drama type show. And the template I kind of used for it was How to Get Away with Murder, which is one of my favorite TV shows. So that's really more what it's like. It's more of a kind of mystery intrigue type show with a lot of, murders and, the self-defense and legal.
Well, and that show does it so well too.
Yeah. Like all the TV shows mentioned in the books, I have a kind of a template for them. So if I have to go back and describe them later, I can kind of keep it straight, what kind of stories that each show would be doing.
I feel like we need to have a reader do one of those, like, how people make fake movie trailers?
Yes.
We need to have fake soap opera trailers for Murderbot's favorite soap operas.
That would be so cool.
That would be absolutely awesome. Someone somewhere out there, please do that for us, because that would just be phenomenal. Let's see. So this question is coming in from Gloria, and she's asking, so Murderbot hacked its own CPU to control its own destiny. Will control and English is hard. Will control and self-actualization be an ongoing theme in the books? And yes, I'm hoping for more.
Yeah, I think yeah, definitely.
I was about to say that sounds like it would be a yes, given everything we've been talking about. And then this one is from Emery. In the book, it's revealed that Murderbot has been deliberately redacting the name of the company. This was wondrously tragic detail. Will we ever see Murderbot's recovery from that trauma, or at least name the company?
I don't know. I haven't thought too far ahead about what else I'm going to do, but the reason Murderbot doesn't name the company is not because of the trauma so much, but it's kind of a way of erasing the company from the narrative. Basically.
Is it almost kind of like a disassociation, like to compare it to what people do with things?
Not really disassociation either. It's very deliberate. You know, it knows it's doing it. It's a way of disrespecting the company to kind of take the name away from it.
Not even be like not worthy of acknowledgement, not giving it credit or anything.
And because the branding for the corporations are so important in that universe, just a little dig at the company every time that it's taken away that identity.
You even see that now with how people interact on social media, where they'll talk about something huge that's happened and they're like, I don't even want to say that person's name because I don't even want to give them any more clout or anything else as to what they already have, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we have from Kara, and also I apologize if I butcher anyone's name. I'm doing the best. But this one's coming in from Kara, and it says, one of the things I love about Murderbot is its empathy toward other bots, AI, and people. Did you envision this as something that sprung out of its programming to protect clients, or is this something that might have developed from its affection towards soap operas and dramas?
I don't know where exactly it would have developed. I think it's part of Murderbot's personality. It's been treated, and I think it refers to this in Network Effect, it's been treated like a thing, so it tends not to treat anybody else like a thing. I think that too, that always comes back into the play with like AI and consciousness, is it's always that back and forth of, can it actually be developing its own consciousness, or is it just phenomenal programming and a recognition of patterns? Yeah. And that's such a hard thing to dive into, because technically, could our consciousness just be a reaction and patterns that we've already established? And what differentiates that between Murderbot? Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
A really, really, really hard thing to dive into. I mean, who ultimately knows the answer for that one? Well, you do, because we've got to create this world, which is... So this one is coming in from Michael, and it said, did you always plan, we already covered this one in the beginning, so if you're just joining, they're asking, did you always plan to do more than the first story? So when the stream is done, you can go back to the beginning and we talk more in depth about that part. Do you have a plan as far as how long you want the series to be? That kind of ties into the beginning, but is there a number or anything, or just kind of feeling it out?
I'm kind of feeling it out as I go along. I'm not an outliner or a planner very far in advance. I kind of I'm a seat of the pants writer, basically. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I'm developing the series. So I don't really know how much more. A lot of it will tell me how many people buy the books, and can I still, continue with it?
Yeah. So buy books, people. But our next question comes in from Sherry, and Sherry is asking, as the series progresses, the Preservation Alliance feels more and more like a paradise. What makes it work? Do they have a secret natural resource like Wakanda does? Do they have allies, backers, or human powers that we don't know about yet? Are there ever real socio-political conflicts? And how are those solved? Maybe future book, read this book answers, or? Yeah,
some of it, there's really no secret. It's just they just have a very well organized system, and where they don't have billionaires sucking up a lot of their resources, basically. They have resources for everybody. It's just good management and planning and that kind of thing. There's no secret. They do have political conflicts about, what they want to do and everything, and they just resolve them with arguing and laws and and things like that. There's no real secret to it.
Oh, this one is nice. This one ties into how we were talking about your writing earlier. This is from Jen, and Jen's asking, do you find it easier to write novellas or full-length novels?
I actually find it easier to write novels. That's normally what I've done. The first novellas I did 4 novellas for the Books of the Raksura. It's a 5-book series within 2 novella collections with 2 novellas in each, and then some extra short stories. Murderbot, or All Systems Red, was the first novella I did that was a new world, basically, that I wasn't writing in a world I'd already established. And those were, All Systems Red was pretty easy to write. It went very quickly. The rest were lots more complicated for me. At least it took me a lot more work. I did All Systems Red in 1 month. And then each of the other novellas took 3 to 4 months, even though they're not that much longer. And actually, Network Effect was very hard to write. I normally write a book in about 11 to 12 months, and it took me 18 months to do Network Effect. It's just Murderbot's multiple perspective, especially with the logistics and the fight scenes and everything. It just makes it all a lot more complicated. So yeah, it wasn't. I think I actually like novels better because you just have more time and room to develop everything, and you can go have more interesting subplots and that kind of thing. You can't really do that, too much of that in a novella.
You can understandably fit more in.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of the things that I've noticed, and I've been at Mysterious Galaxy about a little bit over 3 years now, and one of the things I've noticed is that there's almost like a resurgence in popularity amongst novellas.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What do you think, from like a writer's perspective, why do you think that readers are kind of being drawn more towards novellas again right now?
Well, I think it's, there's a lot more of them out there. For a long time before ebooks got started, there wasn't really a market for novellas because early on, a lot of the early science fiction novels are very short, and nowadays they'd be classified as novellas. They're around 30 to 50,000 words. Those tiny little paperbacks they used to sell. And then as books got bigger, and the way paper costs and printing costs and all that kind of thing, it just wasn't feasible to do printed novellas very much. And then ebooks hadn't started up yet, so you didn't have them. You can buy them online like you can now. Once we got ebooks, a lot of writers started writing and self-publishing novellas, and so publishers got back into it. And then especially we started having online magazines. A lot of magazines before they got online didn't have room for novellas, or if they did have room, they only had room for one fairly short one. Now, if you're an online magazine, you can do however many novellas you want and however many short stories you have a little more space. And now novellas have started to get popular because of that. And so we see more publishers wanting to do them and finding ways to, to put them out. So I think that's why readers that like them is because there's just, there's so much more variety with them. And I think it's also a good way to kind of introduce yourself to a new author, because you get that, long enough to give you a substantial story, but short enough to read quickly.
It's not daunting. You're not like, 1,000 pages. This is a big commitment. I don't know if I can jump in or not.
Yeah, it's not like a 4,000 page book in the middle of a series or something. You can just, have something really quick.
So if the internet has given us one good thing, it is the revival of novellas.
Yes, basically.
So thank you to the internet for that. Our next question that we've got is from Anthony, and it says, can you create a Murderbot Twitter account so they can occasionally brighten up my feed with observations about our
I don't know. I don't have a lot of time. And
this is when we need a team. We need someone to do trailers for soap operas, and then we need another branch of that can be in charge of doing the Murderbot Twitter account.
Yeah. I spend too much time online as it is, basically.
Our next
one. See a lot of swearing at people too.
There'd be a lot of stupid human comments.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think there was, did I miss? Oh, I think, I'm sorry, Gloria, I might have missed this one. Murderbot often refers to stupid human ideas. Will we get more examples of stupid human decisions that have helped him develop his opinion?
Probably.
Like, humans always make stupid choices in reality and fiction, so I'm sure there'll be plenty more.
Yeah, there's no shortage of them, so.
Okay, this is from Emery. It says, this question is perhaps a bit self-indulgent, but do you mind if people draw their visions of scenes from the book or fan art?
Oh no, I don't mind that at all. It's always really nice to see fan art.
It's cool to see everyone's interpretation. I think that's one of the cool things is that books are art, but like art, it's always interpreted differently. So how people respond to characters and interpret them in their heads as far as scenery and characters, it's always fascinating to see how it's in someone else's brain. Let's see. This is from Ashley. We have huge Raksura fan as well as a Murderbot lover. I know you have said you might someday return to the world, but focus on different characters. Would love to see adventures with the grown fledglings or even Moon's future Fletch with Bramble. So is that a potential possibility for that?
I don't know right now. I certainly don't want to say one way or the other because I don't like to talk about stuff I might write too much because then if I end up not doing it, it's always really disappointing. But yeah, I would certainly still like to go back to the world at some point because I really enjoyed writing those books. I really enjoyed developing that world, the 3 worlds.
So stay tuned for that, ladies and gentlemen. You never know what the future holds. Here is someone said this is from Clara, that they found a Murderbot story in Wired a few years ago, and they're wondering if there are any other Murderbot short stories kind of floating out in the world that they may be able to find.
There's just the really short one in Wired that was it was basically a series of stories by different authors on the future of work. And of course, Murderbot's story was pretty bleak. There is a short story that I did that was originally, when I wrote it, it was going to be on Tor.com, but then they decided to use it as a pre-order incentive. And so a bunch of people who pre-ordered and submitted the receipts got copies of it. And it's going to be in the trade paperback of Network Effect.
Awesome.
Now, I think that's coming out next year. And so it's definitely going to be there, and it might be in other places. I don't know. It's kind of going to depend on the publisher. But that's about a 3,500 word short story. It's from Dr. Mensa's perspective.
Awesome. So stay tuned for that one next year when the paperback comes around. Or if you already have it from your pre-orders. We've got a question from Sarah. This says, very early in Network Effect, we learned that Murderbot has been illicitly trading downloads with some of Dr. Mencha's kids. Is there anything you worked out about how Murderbot interacts with Dr. Mencha's kids that didn't make it into the novel that you would be willing to share?
I don't think there was anything. If there was things that didn't make it into the book, I probably don't remember it. Because you have to remember, for me, it's been more than a year. It's been about 1.5 years since I finished it. So yeah, and especially that section, it took me 18 months to write, and that section was near the beginning. So it's lost in the morasses of my brain, basically.
Maybe one day it will surface back up again to appear in another story.
Yeah.
Jennifer is asking, do you have a preference between writing science fiction or fantasy? And it seems, because predominantly you have written fantasy. And then is character development easier in one or the other for you?
It's about the same. I don't know if I have it really depends on the story. Some stories are just fantasy stories and some are just science fiction stories. I also kind of like science fantasy. There used to be a lot more of that when I was growing up back in the 70s, when categories weren't quite so rigid. And I think we went through a period where the categories were very rigid. You know, science fiction had this very strict definition, and fantasy had this very strict definition, and fantasy couldn't go outside those boundaries. And now we're getting back more into looser categories where we're not arguing so much about definitions. I mean, back when I first started, my first book came out in like 1993, and I remember being on a panel where people were arguing about, they're trying to define sword and sorcery versus heroic fantasy. And that's just like, you know, apples and apples. So
you're splitting some very small hairs at that point.
Yes, some very fine hairs there. So I don't think you don't see those conversations very much anymore.
I think it's nice to be able to not have like restrictions on it, because it allows authors so much more creativity. Because I remember too, like what you were saying, like C.S. Friedman is like a great author that I used to like because it was a hybrid combination, and there's no reason that they can't meld and mesh with each other. It creates an even cooler experience a lot of the times in an even cooler world, because science and magic is fascinating to have together.
Like Gideon the Ninth is very much science fantasy. You've got swords and spaceships and magic and all these things, and it's just a really cool book that you really don't know what's going to happen next.
Yep. Ooh, Sherry is giving a shout out to your fight scenes. Your fight scenes are terrific. Trying to put in the emotion for you guys. Gripping and creative with just the right amount of detail. How do you research for them and construct them in your head?
With a lot of difficulty. I've just been writing. I have a lot. Huh?
Are there any, like, you're in your room, like, flailing around or anything?
No, I don't really do that. I've just had a lot of experience doing them, and for different, in the different fantasy novels I've done, I've always kind of had different combinations of weapons and abilities for the characters, so you have to think about it in a lot of different ways. I've done Stargate Atlantis books where again they have automatic weapons that changes the whole dynamic of how you do a fight scene and how you do these action scenes and everything. So that's a good kind of ramp up for Murderbot when they're using more science fiction weapons, and so you have to think more more faster. The fight's going to move faster, and people are going to be able to have, shoot people from distances, and then you add drones into it, and that's even more complicated. But yeah, it's just I've done research on things like sword fighting and knife fighting and things like that that I used in my previous books. So yeah, it's just a lot of experience writing things and looking stuff up, and then especially watching fight scenes in movies and TV and kind of mentally analyzing those and that kind of thing too.
It's like choreography. So
yeah, it's like choreography. Yeah.
Ooh, Rebecca, let's see. I've been reading a lot of autistic and neurodiverse authored science fiction fantasy. So that interest informs my question. In the books, Murderbot inhabits a cyborg body mind among the human majority population, and I think we might be able to more broadly categorize him as neurodivergent. I know you already mentioned Murderbot's anxiety and depression, but is exploring cognitive difference more generally something you're interested in here?
Well, I'm non-neurotypical myself, so it's not so much exploring it as in letting this character show a little bit more of how I think sometimes, and kind of drawing on more of my personal experience.
Let's see. Rhonda has a question of, you've been writing and winning awards for 25 years. Have you been surprised at the response that Murderbot has had? Because it's had such a great response from your readers. And why do you think that it has hit the populist vein so directly?
What was the last part? Dropped out a little bit.
why do you think they have hit this populist vein so directly?
Okay. I actually haven't been winning awards for a long time. 2017 was when I won my first award. I'd been, I think, nominated for a couple of things early on, but after that, there was pretty much nothing for years and years and years. So I don't know why Murderbot's been so popular. I think it's possibly a combination of when the first novella came out, the title of the series, The Murderbot Diaries, is a really kind of exciting title for people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Tor.com did a good job promoting it on they have an email mailing list that you can sign up for, and kind of a book club where I think you can get things, novellas free occasionally and stuff like that. So I think it just caught on, and I also think a lot of people read it quickly. I know, because with a novel, a lot of times people, especially if it's a new world or in the beginning of a new series or whatever, or a new author, you kind of let it sit for a while before you pick it up. You don't pick it up and start reading it immediately. And I think with All Systems Read, a lot of people read it very quickly and started talking about it. And that kind of helped get the word of mouth. The word of mouth is really essential for a book to succeed. I mean, you can do all the advertising in the world, but unless people start reading it and start talking about it, it's just going to sit there.
Books really respond, I feel like, grassroots almost. Everyone's talking about it though, and it's spreading.
This question is from Blue Jay Books, is their Twitter handle. And it says, in All Systems Read, it's mentioned that Sec Unit /Murderbot still receives commands from its governor module, but doesn't have to follow them. Does Murderbot continue to get commands from its governor module throughout the rest of the series that it ignores / actively goes against?
It's not getting commands from the governor module. It was getting them from the sec system and the hub system that it was connected to in the habitat. Once it left that environment, it's not hearing anything. It controls what it has access to and what it's connected to. So it's not, the governor module is basically just defunct. It's kind of a little thing that the hub system or the security system could activate to cause punishment for disobeying commands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not really a factor anymore.
Awesome. So we are getting close to our time. So I think this is a good segue question into our last kind of couple questions. Is Ginger's asking, I know you're working so hard on this book launch, but are you working on a new book project that you can talk to us about?
I've had trouble. I was supposed to basically, in March, I had some stuff to do. I had a convention and then the Joko cruise, and I was going to come back and start on a new book. And then we had the terrifying pandemic. So I haven't been getting very much done. I think a lot of writers are in the same position. So I've been, and I wrote about 3,000 to 4,000 words on a new Murderbot story, and then ended up kind of, it wasn't working. So set it aside, and I'm trying to restart again. That's pretty typical for how I work on Murderbot. I tend to write each of the last 3 novellas, and then the novel were like this, where I write, 5 to 10,000 to 20,000 words, and then end up cutting most of it out and starting again. So that's what I've already done that once. On the book, it was just like this huge cycle of writing 10,000 to 20,000 words and cutting it back down to maybe 5,000 and then starting over again, repeat until insane, basically.
So do you kind of get to like word vomit and then go back and edit it and look at what you did? Is that kind of how it works? Or
well, usually what happens is I word vomit off in the wrong direction. So and then I have to come back, but there's phrases and lines and paragraphs I really like, so I'll have to try to save those, and then that just kind of makes the whole thing more confusing as trying to stitch this together. So it's just a huge mess. So I've got down and stuff like that, but I haven't really gotten anything going. And that's really all I can talk about at this point. there is other stuff, but I can't really talk about it yet. Oh, I have a short story that's a fantasy short story called The Salt Witch that's going to be coming out in Uncanny magazine at some point later this summer or fall.
Very nice, very nice. And then you did mention the pandemic. Kind of hard not to think about with everything going on. So I think these are two good questions to kind of wrap things up on, and also because we've been talking about writing and craft especially. But for inspiration, especially during times like these, is there a specific author, book, or story that you turn to kind of reignite that spark for you?
There's a lot of different authors. I've been reading, I read a lot, and I try to read a lot of new to me authors and debut authors because I really like to keep current with what's going on in the field. There's so much good stuff coming out now. It's just nuts. But like I read, one of the things I do reread, I love the Rivers of London series. That's a comfort reread for me. And also I think the more he adds to the series, the more they reward rereading. I read Nora Jemison's new book, The City We Became. That was some of the Tor.com novellas. I read The Empress of Salt and Fortune, which is a novelette, and it's like an whole epic fantasy series in this novelette, and it's just like it's just masterfully written. And I read the new the second book in Fond-du-Lis's Jade War. I'm looking forward to I can't remember what the book is called. I think it's I'm gonna mess it up. The third book is for the Poppy War trilogy.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I know the cover, but not the title. But that's a staff favorite at the store as well.
Yeah, I saw it the other day, and on Twitter, and I can't remember the name. But I've just been reading a lot of different things. I got to see the Emily Tesh had two novellas, Silver in the Wood, and I got to see the sequel. I think it's The Drowned Country. Those were. So yeah, I've just been reading a whole bunch of different stuff, and nothing in particular. It's just I'm kind of looking at new stuff that can really like engage my brain and be excited by, and hopefully jumpstart something.
I think we can all learn from that. It's so easy sometimes to get stuck in like your one little like tunnel vision of the genre that you like to read, and there's so many books you can like outside of it, but sometimes it's really, really, really easy to forget that there are books outside of that little lane that you sometimes can get stuck in.
Yeah, and I find it frustrating when I see people, particularly authors, who are asked for book recommendations, and everything they recommend is either 10 to 20 years old.
Yeah.
Or it's their best friend on Twitter, and it's like I like my friends on Twitter and I read their books, but it's like sometimes it feels very incestuous, and you need to keep trying new authors and kind of see what the new people who are winning awards or having exciting debuts, are doing.
It's like how they say you never stop learning.
Yeah, that's what I really think. I've been in the past really in a reading rut, and after a while you just kind of read out, you're kind of waiting for your favorites to write something, and you end up with nothing to read,
Yep, I've had that happen before to me. You're sitting on your hands for a long time waiting sometimes.
Yeah, and it's like I'm it's time to look around and look for the new people and see what's going on.
Well, that is about time for us. And I know one book that everyone out there should go out and pick up and read, and that is Martha Wells' new book, Network Effect. So speaking of new books and inspirations, that is definitely one you should add to your list. And you can still get signed copies. The link is up at the top. Well,
you guys know the visual of why I'm pointing up the link there. And I just want to say thank you for all of our readers and viewers for tuning in. And also thank you so much to Martha for answering all of these questions and for letting us see a little bit into the world of you as an author and your mind with these amazing characters.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me. It's always nice to get to talk to people. And the books will be signed, right? These are the books that I'm getting at my house. Yep. I'm going to sign them and send them on to you guys.
Exactly, yep.
And send them to the people. But yeah, so it's been really fun. I was glad to be able to do this. It's too bad I couldn't do it in person like we originally planned.
I know. Next time we'll get you. Well, we are going to log off of Facebook, everyone. Goodbye.